All right, good morning, everyone. So, well, welcome to the whole start of ONS, and welcome to the ONF tutorial. And we have a lot of material, a lot of presentations, and a lot of great speakers to share with you today. So, hopefully you've seen the agenda. It's online, and we're going to go through essentially 7 major sections today of different content. So, and I'm going to kick it off. My name is Timon Sloane. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Ecosystem with the ONF. And I'm going to try to put everything in context for you. It's a challenge because the ONF tends to move pretty fast, and we have a lot of different projects. There is a strategy to it all, how it fits together, but I can understand it can be hard to consume just because of the speed at which it moves. And so, my goal today is to try to help you consume it all, understand it from a big picture perspective, and then we're going to essentially dive down into all the different aspects of it today to give you really a great full spectrum taste of everything that's going on, and to try to help you to find and identify places where you might find synergies and want to do more with us and come and get more active in the community. So first of all, though, a show of hands, how many of you feel like you're pretty familiar with the ONF and ONF activities? So maybe about half kind of hands, maybe it's a touch more. Okay, good. So that helps me quite a lot. And I think that if you didn't raise your hand, perfect, you're in a good place. And if you raised your hand, things move so fast that I can assure you that there will be things that are new to you today. It's almost impossible for that not to be the case. So for those of you who don't know the ONF well, I want to take really 2 slides to just kind of say, who we are, what we do, and why we're different. So the ONF is really unique in that we're an operator-led consortium. The operators you see here on the slide are the top-tier operator partner members with the ONF. They're on our board of directors, and they really steer and guide our activities. In addition to these 7 operators, there are another 13 operators that are part of the ONF ecosystem, and the ONF ecosystem itself is over 140 organizations of different types. And these operators have come together in the context of the ONF with a specific purpose. And really that is around finding a common problem and collaborating to address that problem. So if you ask yourself, what common problem do all these operators, and really all operators worldwide, have today? And in some ways, the easiest way to think of it is that the operators are finding themselves competing with over-the-top players and cloud players and need new innovative ways to be successful and competitive and to produce results. And so they really want cloud-like economics and agility. The ability to use common off-the-shelf components, common infrastructure, and be able to deploy new services rapidly. And they don't have those tools today, nor do they necessarily have all those skills, and they're on a journey and a mission to really reinvent themselves and reinvent their architectures and their infrastructure to be able to give them that agility. And they're not getting what they need from the existing supply chain. It's the incumbent vendors are still really selling prepackaged, vertically integrated solutions, and they're really in a need, like the cloud operators, of having components that they can assemble and put together on their own. Otherwise, they're going to continue to be stuck in a 9 to 18-month turn cycle to be able to deploy any new kinds of capabilities. So that's really what we're after here. So, the top-tier operators I mentioned on the last slide are really at the apex of our structure, but there are a whole set of different companies that are involved with us. There are a whole set of supply chain partners, a whole set of innovating operators, and then a whole set of other companies, innovators and collaborators, as we call them. And the top-tier operators all have a seat on our board of directors. And you can see here that a number of these individuals, these are really senior individuals from really the most forward-leaning operators worldwide. And they really help drive our initiatives and drive our strategy. And that's central to the way we operate and the mission that we continue to pursue. So I want to use a slide that's been around for a little bit just to set the context that, when we think of CORD and we think of re-architecting the edge of the network, what ONF started to pursue at this point, maybe even over 4 years ago, was really trying to use what has become now sort of the traditional data center, which is a spine leaf fabric, Ethernet fabric, and then running white box servers and switches hanging off of that fabric, as you see here today. And you notice I have some gaps because I'm going to fill it in with what kind of makes Chord and ONF unique. And the way that, the way to think of it is that ONF has pursued an architecture where the data center can hang off specialized components as necessary to support different kinds of subscribers and special operator capabilities. So the first is residential subscribers, PON systems hanging off of the spine leaf fabric to connect to residential subscribers, and then a whole set of software components that make it do its thing and make it possible to support and run those customers. And then likewise for mobile, again a set of specialized hardware that connects to connect to subscribers and software components, and also for enterprise. And then lastly, on the WAN side, specialized components that can help connect this system and this site to the backbone of the network. And this is the modular architecture of Chord. It's really the beauty of Chord is that an architecture like this can scale to be something very small to something that's the size of this room as necessary. It can support all kinds of subscribers and also gives the operator a lot of agility in how they deploy and what components they deploy. So this is Chord as it was known maybe even a year and a half ago today. And what I'm going to do today is really kind of bring you up to date so that the context of all the rest of the talks today makes sense. So the way I think of it is that, and this is kind of, everybody knows this, access, edge, and core operator network connecting to multiple subscribers. And operators historically have separate networks for mobile and separate network for broadband. Different equipment, different set of operators, people running it, different billing systems, the whole thing. And so what the ONF did when we started off, we started very low down. We weren't even really thinking about mobile at that point, or broadband even. But back 8 years ago at this point in time, the ONF started pursuing SDN as a concept and OpenFlow as a tool to help break the networks apart. And then built the ONOS, open source controller, that can run on top of an OpenFlow fabric. On top of that, ONF built Trellis, an NFV fabric that can create a white box spine leaf architecture. And then on top of that, we built RChord, which is a pretty well-known term for residential chord, for connecting residential subscribers, running on top of this whole stack. And then we built and prototyped mChord for mobile subscribers. So this is sort of a software stack view of where we were a year and a half ago. I sort of layered this on top of the last diagram of the hardware diagram. So, but what's happened over the last year, some of this is even very recent in the last month or so, is that a bunch of things. So number one, we realized that RChord and mChord were really a bit too monolithic. And so what we did is we disaggregated those projects. So RChord split into SIBA and Volta. You're going to hear about all these parts and pieces throughout the day, and to RChord for subscriber management. And mChord also split into a RAN side component for a RAN controller and for a core component for a mobile core, EPC. Then, in the middle here, Trellis switched, and it moved from an NFV fabric to becoming also an SDN backhaul. Notice these components, as I've drawn them here, are actually not necessarily in one site, but they can actually be distributed physically. So we recognized, really our operators recognized, that you could use Trellis, but you could actually start to move things out of the building. It doesn't all have to be packed into one room. You can spread things around and place things wherever you want, but still get all the benefits of a spine leaf fabric. We added a project called ODTN about a year ago or so for optical networking to connect the site back towards the WAN. And then we started a whole initiative around next generation SDN, which has a number of components, but really OpenFlow and ONOS are now migrating forward. And OpenFlow is really moving forward towards P4 and a project of ours called Stratum for a white box switch that leverages P4 and a whole P4 toolchain. And then ONOS is moving forward as well to a next generation ONOS, a microservice-based ONOS that can really take advantage of the full next generation stack and P4 and the P4 toolchain. And you're going to hear about next gen SDN next segment in this tutorial today. Then, very recently, we announced something called Commack, a new project that actually brings together some of the pieces we disaggregated here. That's kind of part of the journey through all of this SDN. It seems you break things apart and you then reassemble them in different unique ways. And so Commack is actually taking advantage of some of the componentry to be able to connect both mobile and broadband subscribers to one infrastructure to deliver kind of a uniform infrastructure to deliver services, and then be able to deliver unique services to those types of subscribers that can roam between service types and a number of other things. And then lastly, on this slide, you noticed until now that Chord didn't appear on here. I mean, Chord is our best-known project, and I want to make it clear that Chord is really the umbrella for all the components you see here above the next-gen SDN stack. As we disaggregate, we start talking about the components and the internal pieces, and they're all individually consumable on their own. But it's important to realize that all of these plug together like Lego blocks, really, into one architecture. And that's what we'll try to help guide you through today to help you understand. So, all of this is having pretty tremendous traction worldwide. And this has been going on, but for about 3 years or so, just the amount of interest, the amount of operator traction has been quite substantial. And this just gives you a taste of what's happening out there. That really in every geography, worldwide, different companies are consuming different components of this and pursuing it in different ways. And you're going to hear directly from a number of operators today as well. Some operators are integrated into individual talks, and then at the end of this tutorial, we have sort of an operator lightning talk session where we've asked a number of operators to come up and each give a 10-minute kind of synopsis of how they're consuming ONF projects and where this work is important to them. So, on top of just the names here, just over the last year plus or so, 2 analysts have surveyed operators worldwide and come back with pretty dramatic results. That from Roz from Heavy Reading, that 40% of end customers, like subscribers, will be running on Chord by 2021, and from Michael Howard, that 70% of all operators are planning to deploy Chord. So these projects have really significant traction. This is quite a journey. Transforming operator networks has never been a trivial undertaking. Anybody who's been in this side of the business knows how difficult it is for operators to upgrade their networks. Here we're not just upgrading the network, but we are fundamentally transforming the operator networks. And we're also transforming the operator culture and their internal expertise as part of this journey. So, it's quite an undertaking, but the momentum here is undeniable. We continue to see growth, and it's a very, very exciting time. And encourage, if this is not something that you've been really familiar with or attached to, we can encourage you to take a closer look. So, in order to drive things forward, but also to help the industry understand how the pieces fit together, the operators undertook something new a year ago called Reference Designs. How many of you have heard of Onf Reference Designs? So here it's about 20% of the room or so. So the operators were hearing from the industry that it was too confusing. Everybody's assembling things in different ways, and there wasn't enough critical mass behind any single initiative, and that the vendors in particular had a hard time understanding where to invest and how to participate here. And so what the operators did is put together a new structure and a new process, and in some ways as a way of thinking inside the ONF. And it starts with the operators on the left, and it also starts with really sort of the traditional open source way of working, which is, you build components, you assemble them into platforms, and you move it towards deployment of some form. So, what we do is open source first. The ONF remains open source first, even with this new reference design process being added to what we do. But what we've done, what the operators have done is create this notion of a reference design, which are specifications for how multiple operators are agreeing to jointly pursue a certain type of transformation in their network. And it describes how to assemble certain components and the value and the reasoning behind that, and really the strategy for how to go after transforming a broadband or mobile components and the like. And then thirdly, and very importantly, the operators are also committing to consume from these reference designs in their procurement process, in the RFP process. So as they go out and spec what they're deploying, they're going to refer back to these reference designs. And so, as a participant in this industry, understanding what the reference designs are and what operators are planning to consume them gives you direct line of sight visibility towards what's going to be deployed and where dollars are going to get spent. And this is all intended to help the industry understand where the operators are going and help the industry invest in ways that will ultimately be able to feed the needs of the operators. So you'll notice reference designs, components, and platforms. So throughout the day, we're going to essentially walk you through these pieces. So there are, at this point, 5 reference designs that are in flight. You're going to see a significant announcement tomorrow about 3 of these reference designs, so they've really been moving forward dramatically. For each reference design, there's a paired exemplar platform. This is the way it works. They go hand in hand. So you have a reference design, you have an exemplar platform, a specification, and open source. You can read about it, try to understand the logic behind it, the modularity, the APIs, or you can consume it. You can trial it. You can download it without any strings attached. And so this is our strategy, and it's working with quite nice effect, is what we found. And then also we have the components. And so all these components run up into the different exemplar platforms. And again, we'll walk you through this today and help you understand how all these pieces connect. So I want to close just, this is a large open source conference. There are a lot of different pieces that you'll be hearing about and diving into throughout the week. And so just trying to understand ONF, I've talked some about our strategy and the like, but there's some other elements that are different in the way we approach things and what we do. So, the first is that we're operator-led, and we talked about that earlier. And we pursue what we call a curated open source model, which means that we specifically, the operators drive these exemplar platforms of how to assemble the pieces together, rather than just building components and then letting anybody consume the components, which people can do. We found that was too confusing in many ways, and that by being able to actually help actually assemble it into complete solutions, that it's easier to consume, and we're getting more rapid adoption, and people understand it and can get started faster. Think of it as a car. Rather than going out and getting some tires and an engine and a steering wheel, we give you a car, and you can go out and drive the car. Now, you may want to change the car, and that's fine, but it's a lot easier to get started if you can kind of start with something that's whole and holistic. And so that's our strategy. In order to execute on that strategy, we found that we really needed an engineering team. And so again, we're really unique here, that we're the only open source organization with a team. The ONF has about 30 employees in total. I think 27 of them are engineers, a number you'll hear from today. And the ONF lab really ensures that we're able to pursue our agenda and drive disruption and not rely just on the community as a whole to be able to really provide contributions. Because to be frank, there are many times when we pursue an agenda that can be considered disruptive. I would say almost always that's what we're doing. That's our charter. And when you're doing something disruptive, it's hard to completely rely on outside resources to be able to help drive your mission forward. And then, lastly, that we focus on the access and edge. And really driving disruption at the access and edge is essential. And there are a couple of reasons for this, but if you think about it from an operator perspective, that the vast majority of CapEx and OpEx is deployed at the edge of the network, 80%. And so, if you're going to be able to pursue an architecture to use white box and disaggregation and open source, and the bang for the buck is in the access and the edge. And that's the reason we really started there. It's also really interesting to see that in the last year, suddenly the edge has become one of the hottest places in the network, because people are recognizing that it's at the edge where one can deploy advanced latency-sensitive applications and other things. And we just happen to natively already be at the edge, because that's where we've been focusing for many, many years at this point in time. And we now have a whole cohesive solution focused on the edge. And then I want to talk, just set the ONF work in context with other projects. So, the blue in the middle here is ONF. I've talked about a lot of the pieces. We're going to be diving into this blue box in the middle today. But, first of all, kind of the dotted line, standards and open source are kind of different. They kind of overlap in certain spots. And I just want to point out where multi-access edge compute, MEC, sort of sits as defining a set of APIs, kind of eye up above kind of an edge system. And ORAN, who we're partnered with and doing quite a lot with, is focused on architecture and APIs for opening up the RAN side of the network. We northbound connect to different orchestrators, and Onap is a project you'll probably hear about as well here. And so we work with Onap above. OSM's a more European-driven activity in that space. And if you look below, TIP and OCP are two other more open source hardware organizations, and we consume from them. We view them as delivering and helping to produce white box systems that we can consume. OCP more at server storage and the PON side, and TIP is doing more on the optical side and the RAN side. And then there are a set of projects in there too, Akrano and Kubernetes and other sort of platform software components that we also rely on. Openstack is in there too, although we're not using Openstack as much, and you can get a whole version of code that doesn't even require Openstack now. But all of that, again, sort of feeds all the ONF activities as well. So this is a dated slide, but it's, or not dated, but it was didn't get swapped out. This was designed for a telco show I was at, but, excuse me. But it still applies here in a lot of ways. That, the telcos have invested a lot in this space. Tens of millions, if not even hundreds of millions of dollars have gotten invested in what's going on today and what you're going to hear about. That comes from the operators. It comes from the supply chain that's been participating. We've been at this 8 years at this point in time. And we've actually proven that open source white box and disaggregation works. And that, and a lot of people didn't believe it at the start, right? But now at this point in time, this says cablecos, but it's really everybody in this room can participate and can consume this work and benefit from this work. And that's, we're a nonprofit, and our whole mission here is to broaden the community and to broaden adoption and to help people understand and consume what we're doing. And so, it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us. And, we now have all these tools. They're free. They're out there with Apache licensing. And, our greatest wish is just to be able to see more and more adoption of the work that we're doing. So, I'm here throughout the week. I'm happy to help, if you're trying to figure out how to interface with our community, you're trying to figure out where to connect, I'm always happy to try to help you and help guide you to other parts of our organization or to other companies or whatnot. So please feel free to reach out to me. So with that, I want to bring up Brian, probably, right? Oh, Devjit, I think swap things around. Okay, good.